These pieces refer a bit to, I'll just come out from behind the podium here. These pieces, this one in particular, refer a little bit back to the performance piece I did with Karina Bergman's The Cake Show, and in which we both dressed up as cakes. I dressed up as like a white layer cake, and she basically kind of dressed up as a party cake with cupcakes on her breasts. And kind of what that show was, at least part of what that show was talking about is, you know, the cake is kind of central to a modern ritual. So, and we were both kind of the high priestesses of the ritual and the main dish. So that's kind of the paradox with, you know, sexual or just even an expression of, you know, being beautiful is like you can be in possession of it, but at the same time, you're kind of an object being looked at and something, you know, possibly being consumed. So the tension between, are you putting on an act for other people's benefit, or is this something that you really relate to, that you feel empowers you? So that's a lot of what's going on in these pieces, I think, you know, now that I think about it. There's been a lot of those kinds of ideas going around in my head. Let's look at this piece over here on the other side of the wall that hasn't gotten a lot of attention. This one is, rather than being about a corset, this is more directed at the bustle, the women, you know, turn of the century Victorian, Edwardian era. They would have, you know, this great poofy structure underneath their dresses, you know, to give them that curvaceous, those really, really curvaceous hips, but almost to the point where you couldn't get near the women, at least not from the back. But so this piece is what it ended up looking like is kind of being very spiritual, but almost kind of electric, like with the reds and the yellows. So it makes me think a lot of the era, you know, the turn of the century, where the cult of true womanhood was very big. Women were, you know, thought to be tremendous moral forces, you know, goddesses of domesticity. You know, the world of business, you know, the big bad world, that was the domain of men, and the internal world was the domain of women. This, you know, religious, moral environment where, you know, you were safe. But at the same time, you know, during this era, women were becoming, you know, pioneers in social change, and this, you know, women as a moral force, you know, in part, this led to suffragettism. I'm not sure if that's a word. And of course, lots of other things were involved in that as well. But like, you know, women as a moral force, you know, maybe for the anti-feminists, that kind of backfired, and women became, you know, vehicles for social change. So, yeah, and they did it all, or at least they did it to start with, in corsets and muscles, and, you know, had to get out in the world, and they still did it. So, and then eventually they started to wear pants, and there's the era of the bloomer, and I'm going to be doing a few more pieces related to bloomers. Women, you know, rather than wearing the corsets and the muscles, would get these far more comfortable, but, you know, questionable whether they were attractive, these big puffy pants. Yeah, so I think that's just pretty much all I had to say. Any questions?